"What are you doing out here in the rain?" Alexander Walsh was driving home that Monday afternoon when he saw something that froze him. His housekeeper, Melissa, sitting under a tree in the pouring rain, crying, eating leftovers from a foam box. He slammed on the brakes and rushed out into the storm, and when he asked her that question, the answer shattered everything he thought he knew about his life. Every morning started the same way. Coffee alone, breakfast by himself. The house was too big for one person, empty bedrooms, quiet hallways, rooms he never used. 3 years since the divorce, 3 years of waking up to silence. This was Alexander's life now, successful, lonely, hollow. The only other voice he heard most days was hers. Melissa came every weekday at 6:30. She cleaned, organized, kept things running, quiet, never caused trouble, never asked for anything, just did her work and left. He barely noticed her. She was just there, part of the routine, invisible. Until one morning when their eyes met. He was passing through. She was reaching for something. Their eyes locked for maybe 2 seconds, and he saw something he'd never seen before. Pain she was hiding. Exhaustion that didn't belong on someone her age. She looked away fast, but that moment stayed with him. That Friday, he threw a dinner party. 50 people, business types, expensive catered food, salmon, champagne, fancy desserts. Everyone ate 2 bites and left the rest. Melissa worked that night, clearing dishes, filling glasses. No one even looked at her. After everyone left, Alexander was in his office when he saw something through the window. Melissa standing by the fridge, staring at all that leftover food about to be thrown out. She hesitated, looked around, then quickly put some in a container and slipped it into her bag. Her hands were shaking. He didn't say anything, just watched her leave. But that night he couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about those hands. Why would someone shake over food going in the trash? What was she going through that he knew nothing about? Monday came. His meeting ended early. He was driving home through a sudden rainstorm when he saw something that made his heart stop. Melissa, under the big tree on his lawn, soaking wet, hunched over, crying while eating from that same container. He slammed on the brakes, rushed out into the rain, his heart pounding. When he got close, he saw her face, shame, raw, crushing shame, tears mixing with rain. "What are you doing out here in the rain?" She looked up, terrified. "Mr. Walsh, I'm so sorry." "Tell me," he said, both of them drenched now. "Please, tell me what's happening." And right there, under that tree, in the pouring rain, everything came pouring out. What she told him in the next 5 minutes broke something inside him he didn't know was still whole. And what he decided to do about it would change both their lives forever. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what you're about to hear will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about sacrifice, love, and what really matters. Stay with me. But let me take you back, before the rain, before the tears, before everything changed. Alexander Walsh was 45 years old and didn't know he was dying inside. He had everything, a career that made headlines, a house people took pictures of from the street, money that multiplied while he slept. But every morning when he opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was emptiness. The divorce happened 3 years ago. His wife left and took the noise with her, took the laughter, took the reasons to come home. What she left behind was space, too much of it. He'd wake up at 5:30, check the overseas markets on his phone before his feet hit the floor, make coffee in a kitchen designed for a family, sit at the island and drink it alone, staring out at the backyard nobody used, the pool, the garden, the patio furniture still wrapped in plastic from last summer. Breakfast was always the same, toast, eggs if he felt like it, eaten standing up, checking emails, one eye on the business news. Then he'd move to his office, the room with the big windows overlooking the water, and start working. Calls with London, calls with Hong Kong. $1 billion decisions made in sweatpants because nobody could see him below the waist on Zoom. Lunch alone, dinner alone, walking through that big house at night, turning off lights in rooms he never turned on. This was his life, and he told himself he was fine. The only other person who saw the inside of that house was Melissa. She started working for him 2 years ago, came through an agency, good references, reliable, showed up every weekday at 6:30 in the morning, rain or shine, did her job without drama. That's all he wanted. At first, he barely noticed her, just heard her moving around, vacuum running upstairs, water in the kitchen sink, the soft click of doors closing. She kept to herself. Didn't try to make conversation, didn't ask personal questions. Perfect. But over time, he started noticing things. The way she folded the kitchen towels in perfect thirds, how she always straightened the books on his shelf by height, even though he never asked her to. The care she took with everything, like it mattered. Like his house mattered, even though it was just a job to her. She was young, late 20s maybe, tired eyes but a strong face. She moved with purpose, never wasted time, never sat down, even on her break. Just worked straight through and left at 3 o'clock sharp. He noticed she wore the same uniform every day, blue, faded at the shoulders, clean but old. Noticed she never ate lunch there, even though he told her she could use the kitchen. Noticed she walked with her shoulders back, head up, proud, even though she was cleaning someone else's toilets. One morning, he was in the library looking for a file when she came in to dust. She didn't see him at first. He watched her run the cloth along the shelves, careful around the spines, gentle with the old books. Then she reached for something on the top shelf, had to stretch on her toes. He stepped forward without thinking. "Let me—" She turned. Their eyes met. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, they just looked at each other. And in that moment, Alexander saw something that made his chest tighten. Sadness. Deep, bone-tired sadness. She blinked, looked away. "Sorry, Mr. Walsh. I'll come back later." "No, it's fine. I was just—" But she was already leaving, dust cloth still in her hand. Alexander stood there alone in the library, heart beating a little faster than it should. He didn't know why, didn't know what that moment meant, but it stayed with him, long after she'd gone home for the day, long after he'd closed his laptop and walked through his empty house turning off lights. Something had shifted, something small, but something. He just didn't know yet how much that small thing would cost him, or save him. After that moment in the library, something changed. Alexander started noticing her more. Not on purpose, it just happened. He'd hear her in the next room and find himself listening, the sound of water running, cabinets opening and closing, her footsteps on the stairs light, quick, efficient. He started timing his coffee breaks differently, coming down to the kitchen when he knew she'd be there. Not to talk, just to be in the same space. She'd look up when he walked in. "Good morning, Mr. Walsh." "Morning, Melissa." That was it. That was all. But he noticed things. The cheap perfume she wore, floral, faint, like she was trying to make a little bottle last. The way she pulled her hair back with the same worn scrunchie every day. The small gold cross around her neck that she'd touch sometimes, like a habit. And he noticed her hands, always moving, always working, scrubbing, folding, polishing, never still. One morning, he saw her arranging fresh flowers in the entryway. She took her time with it, adjusting each stem, stepping back to look, adjusting again, like it was art, not just a chore. "They look nice," he said, passing by. She glanced at him, surprised he'd noticed. "Thank you, Mr. Walsh." He almost asked her name, her first name, but something stopped him, some invisible line he didn't know how to cross. That Friday, he hosted a benefit dinner, something his assistant had organized. 50 people, important people, the kind who wrote big checks and expected to be impressed. The caterers arrived at 4, set up in the dining room, trays of food that cost more than most people's rent. Melissa stayed to help her choice, extra hours. She moved between the kitchen and the dining room, carrying plates, refilling drinks, invisible to everyone there. Alexander watched her sometimes during the evening, saw how the guests looked through her, how they snapped fingers when they wanted something, how they left their plates on random surfaces like she existed just to pick up after them. She never complained, never showed frustration, just kept working. Around midnight, the last guest left. Alexander said his goodbyes, closed the door, and felt the exhaustion hit. These events always drained him, all that fake laughing, all those empty conversations. He went to his office for a late call. Tokyo investors. Numbers that meant nothing to him anymore. While he was talking, he glanced out the window, saw movement in the kitchen. Melissa was still there, standing by the fridge, staring at the leftovers. Mountains of food the guests had barely touched. Salmon, pasta, expensive desserts. All of it going in the trash tomorrow. She stood there for a long time, just looking. Then she glanced toward the doorway, checked if anyone was watching. Alexander should have looked away, should have given her privacy, but he didn't. She reached for a container, moved quickly, scooped food into it, closed the lid, put it in her bag. And her hands were shaking. Not just a little, trembling so hard she almost dropped the container. Alexander felt something twist in his chest, something uncomfortable, something that felt like shame, though he didn't know why. She zipped her bag, straightened her uniform, walked toward the back door, and he just sat there, watching her leave, saying nothing. But that night, lying in bed, he couldn't stop seeing those hands, couldn't stop wondering what kind of life required you to shake while taking garbage food. What was she so afraid of? What was happening outside these walls that he knew nothing about? The questions kept him awake until the sun came up, and he still didn't have answers. Monday morning came like every other Monday. Alexander had a meeting in Manhattan, merger talks, big money, the kind of deal that used to excite him. Now, it just felt like going through motions. The meeting ended early. The other side wasn't ready, needed more time to review numbers. Alexander didn't argue, just packed his briefcase and left. He got in his car around 1:30, started driving home, took the back roads through Connecticut, the scenic route, trees on both sides, quiet. He had the radio off, just driving, thinking about nothing. Then the sky opened up. 1 minute it was cloudy. The next, rain was hammering his windshield so hard he could barely see. Spring storm, the kind that comes out of nowhere and drowns everything. He slowed down, turned on the wipers, kept driving. When he pulled through his gate, he was thinking about changing clothes, maybe working from home the rest of the day. Nothing special, just another Monday. Then he saw her. His foot hit the brake so hard the car lurched. Melissa, on his lawn, under the big oak tree, sitting on the wet ground, hunched over something. What the hell? He threw the car in park, didn't think, just moved, opened the door and ran. Rain hit him like a wall, cold, heavy, soaking through his suit in seconds. His shoes sank into the grass. He didn't care. When he got closer, he saw what she was holding, that foam container, the one from Friday night. And she was crying, not quiet tears, full sobs, her whole body shaking with it. She didn't hear him coming, didn't see him, just sat there in the rain, eating, crying, like the world had finally broken her. Alexander's heart was pounding, not from running, from something else, something he couldn't name. He stopped a few feet away, rain pouring down on both of them. What are you doing out here in the rain? Her head snapped up, eyes wide, face streaked with tears and rain, and the look on her face, God, the look, pure terror, like a child caught stealing. Mr. Walsh, her voice broke, I'm so sorry I didn't. I shouldn't have. Melissa. He stepped closer. Tell me what's happening. I can't, She was shaking so hard she could barely hold the container. Please don't fire me. Please. I need this job. I'm not firing you. He knelt down in the wet grass. Eye level with her now, rain streaming down his face. Just talk to me, please. And something in his voice, maybe the gentleness, maybe the fact that he was kneeling in the mud in a $3,000 suit, made her walls crack. My son, she whispered. Alexander went very still. His name is Jordan. He's 6 years old. Her voice was barely audible over the rain. He has leukemia. The words hit him like a fist. The treatments, I can't afford them, even with insurance. I'm drowning in bills. I work 3 jobs, and it's not enough. It's never enough. Tears poured down her face. I take the train from Bridgeport every day, 2 hours each way. I'm so tired I can't think straight, and She looked down at the food in her hands. I steal your leftovers because if I don't, there's no money for his medicine. I hide because I'm so ashamed, because I know what this makes me. It makes you a mother, Alexander said quietly, fighting for her child. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something passed between them in that moment, something raw and real and completely unguarded. Alexander felt his chest tighten, felt something crack wide open inside him. All his money, his empty house, his comfortable life. What did any of it matter when this woman was choosing between food and her son's life? "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," he said, and he meant it. They sat there in the rain. Two people who'd been living in the same space for 2 years without really seeing each other. Until now. They stayed there for a moment, both soaking wet, rain falling around them like the world had shrunk to just this tree, this grass, this truth between them. Alexander didn't know what to say. Every word that came to mind felt wrong, too small, too meaningless. "Finish eating," he finally said. "Please." She looked at him like he'd spoken a different language. "You're already wet. The food's already out. Just finish." She stared at the container in her hands. Then, slowly, she took another bite, and another. He watched her eat, watched the way she tried to stop crying and couldn't, watched the shame and relief fight on her face. When she was done, she closed the lid with shaking hands. "Let me drive you home," Alexander said. "No, Mr. Walsh. I can take the train." "Melissa." He stood up, held out his hand. "Please." She looked at his hand, hesitated, then took it. He pulled her up. Her hand was cold, small in his. They walked to his car in silence. He opened the passenger door for her. She got in carefully, like she was afraid of getting his leather seats wet. Too late for that, they were both dripping. He started the engine, turned the heat on high. "Where do you live?" "Bridgeport." Her voice was quiet. "I can give you directions." He drove. She sat with her hands in her lap, staring out the window. The rain was lighter now, steady but softer. "I'm sorry," she said after a while. "Stop apologizing. I never wanted you to know. I never wanted anyone to know." "Why?" He glanced at her. "Why carry it alone?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely audible. "Because asking for help feels like failing, and I can't fail. Jordan needs me to be strong." Alexander's throat tightened. He didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to tell her that strength wasn't the same as suffering alone. They drove through neighborhoods that got rougher as they went. Nice houses became small houses. Small houses became apartments. Trees disappeared. So did the space between buildings. "Turn left here," she said. He did. The street was narrow, cars parked on both sides, kids playing in the rain despite the weather, laundry hanging on balconies. "There," she pointed to a 3-story building. Faded blue paint, cracked steps, bars on the ground floor windows. Alexander pulled over, stared at the building. This was where she lived. This was where she went after cleaning his mansion, after folding his towels and dusting his books and making his world perfect. "Thank you," she said, "for the ride, for everything." She reached for the door handle. "Melissa." She paused, looked back at him. He wanted to say something, wanted to tell her he'd help, wanted to make promises, but the words stuck in his throat, because what could he say that wouldn't sound like pity? What could he offer that wouldn't make her feel smaller? "Take care of yourself," he finally said. Something flickered in her eyes, disappointment maybe, or just exhaustion. "You too, Mr. Walsh." She got out, walked to the building, didn't look back. Alexander sat there watching her go, watched her climb those cracked steps, watched her disappear inside. Then he just sat there, engine running, rain tapping the windshield. He thought about his house, thought about all those empty rooms, thought about the wine cellar and the cars and the pool nobody swam in. Thought about a 6-year-old boy he'd never met, fighting for his life while his mother ate leftovers in the rain. And for the first time in 3 years, Alexander Walsh felt something besides emptiness. He felt shame and anger and something else, something that felt like waking up after a long, dark sleep. He put the car in drive, started heading back to Greenwich. But he knew something had changed, knew he couldn't go back to not knowing, couldn't go back to walking through that big house pretending everything was fine. Because it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. And somehow, sitting in his car in the rain, Alexander realized that maybe, just maybe, that was exactly where he needed to start. Alexander drove home, changed out of his wetsuit, tried to work. Couldn't. He kept seeing her face, kept hearing her voice. My son. He's 6 years old. He has leukemia. He tried to focus on emails, on reports, on the numbers that usually made sense. Nothing stuck. Nothing mattered. Around 7, he gave up, closed his laptop, walked downstairs, made dinner he didn't eat, sat in his living room staring at nothing. That night, he barely slept, kept thinking about that building, those cracked steps, the bars on the windows, kept thinking about a little boy he'd never met, sick in some apartment while his mother worked 3 jobs. Tuesday morning, Alexander did something he'd never done before. He cancelled his meetings, all of them. His assistant sounded shocked. Everything okay, Mr. Walsh? Fine, just need the day. He got in his car, drove to Bridgeport. Didn't know why, didn't know what he was doing, just drove. He found her building again, parked across the street, sat there. What are you doing? He asked himself. This is crazy. But he didn't leave. Around 6 in the morning, the front door opened. Melissa came out, different clothes than her uniform, jeans, a jacket, hair pulled back. She was carrying a backpack and moving fast. She walked to the corner, caught a bus. Alexander followed. The bus took her to the train station. She got out, practically ran to the platform. The train pulled in. She got on, squeezed into a car packed with commuters. Alexander sat in his car and just watched. She did this every day, 2 hours each way, standing in packed trains, just to clean his house. He drove back to her neighborhood, waited. Around 8:30, the front door opened again. An elderly woman came out slowly, using a walker, and holding her hand was a little boy. Alexander's breath caught. He was small, thin, wearing a baseball cap, but Alexander could tell no hair underneath. He had a backpack almost as big as he was. The old woman, Melissa's mother, he guessed, walked him to the corner, waited with him until a school bus came. The boy climbed on, turned and waved. The old woman waved back, stood there until the bus disappeared. Then she went back inside, slow, tired, every step an effort. Alexander sat there in his car, feeling like he'd been punched in the stomach. This was her life. This was what she went home to every day. A sick child, an aging mother, buses and trains, and 3 jobs, and not enough money for medicine. And he'd been sitting in his mansion complaining about silence. He drove back to Greenwich, walked into his house. It felt different now, felt like a museum, cold, lifeless, full of things that meant nothing. He walked through room after room, counted the bedrooms, 7 bedrooms for 1 person. Walked past the garage, looked at his cars, 6 cars, for 1 person who barely drove. Went to the kitchen, opened the fridge. It was full, always full, more food than he could eat in a week, and he threw half of it away. While Melissa's son was fighting cancer, while she was eating leftovers in the rain, Alexander sat down at his kitchen island, put his head in his hands, and for the first time in years, maybe the first time since he was a child, he prayed. He didn't know if anyone was listening, didn't know if he even believed anymore, but he prayed anyway. Show me what to do, please, just show me what to do. The house was silent, but something inside him wasn't silent anymore. Something had woken up, and it wouldn't let him rest. Tuesday morning, 6:30. Alexander was in his kitchen, coffee ready, waiting. 6:45. No Melissa. He checked his phone. No message, no call. 7 o'clock. Still nothing. He tried calling her. It rang, went to voicemail. Melissa, it's Alexander Walsh. Just checking if everything's okay. Call me back. He sent a text. Is everything all right? No response. 7:30, 8, 9. Nothing. Alexander couldn't focus. Kept checking his phone. Kept walking to the window like she might suddenly appear. By 10, the worry had turned into something sharper, something that felt like fear. She never missed work. Never. Not in 2 years. Not once. He called again. Voicemail. By 11, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his keys, got in his car, drove to Bridgeport. The whole way there, his mind kept spinning. She's fine. She's probably just sick. Her phone died. Something normal. But his gut knew better. He pulled up to her building, ran up those cracked steps, found her door, knocked. Nothing. He knocked again, harder. "Melissa? It's Alexander Walsh. Are you home?" The door next to hers opened, the elderly woman from yesterday. She looked at him with sad eyes. "You looking for Melissa?" "Yes." Is she okay?" The woman shook her head slowly. "Her boy, Jordan. He took a bad turn last night. Real bad. Ambulance came around 3 in the morning, took him to Yale New Haven Hospital." Alexander felt his stomach drop. "Which hospital?" "Yale New Haven, pediatric floor." He was already turning, already running back down the steps. "Tell her I'm praying," the woman called after him. Alexander drove like he'd never driven before. 40 minutes to New Haven. He made it in 25, parked illegally, didn't care. He ran through the main entrance, found the signs for pediatrics, followed them. Elevator, 4th floor, long hallways that all looked the same. He found the pediatric oncology waiting room, and he found her. Melissa was sitting in a corner chair, alone, bent forward, face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs, so deep they looked like they were breaking her apart. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her hair was falling out of its tie. She looked like she hadn't slept, like she'd been crying for hours. Alexander's chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. He walked over, knelt down in front of her chair. "Melissa." She looked up. Her face was destroyed, eyes swollen, cheeks streaked with tears that wouldn't stop. When she saw him, confusion flickered across her face. "Mr. Walsh? What are you? How did you—" "I went to your apartment. Your neighbor told me." "What happened?" Fresh tears spilled over. "He spiked a fever last night. 104. Started having seizures. I called 911. They brought him here and—" Her voice broke completely. She couldn't finish. "Where is he now?" "They're running tests. His white blood cell count crashed," the doctor said. She pressed her hands to her face. "The treatment isn't working. They want to try something else. Something more aggressive." Alexander waited, barely breathing. She looked at him with eyes that held no hope. "It's experimental. $50,000. Up front, before they'll start." The number hung in the air between them. "My insurance won't cover it. I called them 3 times. They said experimental treatments aren't covered. I called everyone I know, asked about loans. Nobody will approve me. I already owe too much." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't have it. I'll never have it." She looked at her hands. "My baby is going to die because I don't have enough money. 6 years old, and he's going to die because his mother couldn't save him." Alexander felt something break wide open inside his chest. He reached out, took her hands, pulled them away from her face gently. "Melissa, look at me." She did, barely, through tears that wouldn't stop. "Jordan is not going to die." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I'm going to take care of this." She stared at him. "What?" $50,000. I'm paying for it. Today, right now." "No." She pulled her hands back. "No, I can't. You can't." "Yes, I can. I could never pay you back. Not in 10 years. Not in 20. I'm not asking you to." She stood up fast, backed away from him. "I can't take your money. I can't be some charity case. I've worked for everything I have. I can't." "This isn't charity." Alexander stood too. "This is me finally doing something that actually matters." Tears poured down her face. "Why? Why would you do this?" He looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who worked 3 jobs, who rode trains for 4 hours a day, who ate leftovers in the rain to save money for her son's medicine, who never asked anyone for help, who carried everything alone. "Because you showed me I've been living wrong," he said quietly. "Because you and Jordan, you reminded me what actually matters in this life. And if I can help, if I can do this one thing that might save him, then maybe my money is worth something after all." She covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. Alexander stepped closer. Let me do this, please. She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw something break the last wall she'd been holding up, finally crumbling. Okay, she whispered. Okay. And then she collapsed against him, just fell into his chest, sobbing. Alexander wrapped his arms around her and held on while she fell apart. Held her in that hospital waiting room while other families watched. Held her like she'd been holding everything alone for too long, and finally someone was there to catch her. Alexander made the calls right there in the waiting room. First, the billing department. He gave them his information, his credit card, $50,000. The woman on the phone asked him to repeat the amount. $50,000, he said again, for Jordan Vance, pediatric oncology. Melissa stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, watching like she couldn't believe what was happening. Next, he called Jordan's oncology team, authorized the treatment, told them to start as soon as they were ready. The doctor came down 20 minutes later, middle-aged woman with kind eyes and tired shoulders. Miss Vance, we can start the new protocol tomorrow morning, first thing. Melissa's knees buckled. She grabbed the chair beside her. Tomorrow? Yes, we'll prep him tonight. Start treatment at 6 a.m. Melissa pressed her hand to her mouth, nodded, couldn't speak. The doctor looked at Alexander, then back at Melissa. He's asking for you. Room 437. Melissa turned to Alexander. Her eyes were red, but something else was there now. Something besides despair. Would you? She paused. Would you like to meet him? Alexander's throat went tight. Are you sure? Yes. They walked down the hallway together, past other rooms with other sick children, past parents who looked like Melissa, exhausted, afraid, holding on by threads. Room 437 was at the end. Melissa opened the door quietly. The first thing Alexander saw was how small he was. Jordan, lying in that hospital bed, tubes in his arm, monitors beeping softly. He was thin, pale. His head was covered with a baseball cap, but Alexander could see the outline, no hair underneath. But his eyes, God, his eyes were bright, alert, alive. Mom! His voice was hoarse but happy. Melissa rushed to his side, kissed his forehead. Hi, baby. How you feeling? Tired, but okay. Jordan's eyes moved past her to Alexander, curious. Who's that? Melissa looked back, smiled through tears. This is Mr. Walsh. He's a friend, a very good friend. Jordan studied Alexander, then smiled. Gap where his front tooth should be. Hi. Alexander stepped closer. His chest felt too full. Hi, Jordan. Do you like dinosaurs? The question was so innocent, so normal, like they were meeting at a playground instead of a cancer ward. Alexander smiled. I don't know much about them, but I'd like to learn. Jordan's face lit up. I can teach you. Did you know T-Rex couldn't actually roar? Scientists think they made sounds more like big birds. I didn't know that. Yeah, and pterodactyls weren't actually dinosaurs, they were flying reptiles. Different thing. Alexander pulled a chair close to the bed, sat down. Tell me more. And Jordan did. Talked about velociraptors and triceratops and his favorite, the brachiosaurus, because it was the tallest. Talked like he wasn't sick. Like tomorrow morning he wasn't starting a treatment that might save his life or might not work at all. He just talked about dinosaurs, with excitement in his voice and light in his eyes. Melissa stood beside the bed, one hand on Jordan's head, watching Alexander listen to her son. Watching this man she'd worked for 2 years, this billionaire she thought she knew, sitting there, asking questions about prehistoric creatures like it was the most important conversation of his life. And maybe it was. Because Alexander felt something happening inside him, something breaking apart and rearranging, all the pieces of his life that felt meaningless, the money, the deals, the empty house, suddenly they made sense. Not for what they gave him, but for what they could do. For moments like this, for 6-year-old boys who deserved to grow up and become paleontologists, for mothers who deserved to stop drowning, for a purpose bigger than himself. Jordan yawned mid-sentence. His eyes were getting heavy. You should rest, Melissa said softly. Big day tomorrow. Okay. He looked at Alexander. Will you come back? I have more dinosaur facts. Alexander's voice was rough. I'd like that. Promise? Promise. Jordan smiled, closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. Melissa and Alexander stood there in the quiet room, just the sound of monitors beeping, the hum of machines keeping her son alive. "Thank you," Melissa whispered. "I don't have better words than that, but thank you." Alexander looked at Jordan, this small, brave boy who just taught him more about living than he'd learned in 45 years. "He saved me first," Alexander said quietly. "You both did. You just didn't know it." Melissa looked at him, really looked at him, and something passed between them, something that felt like the beginning of something neither of them had words for yet. Something real, something that mattered, something worth fighting for. 3 months passed. Alexander visited the hospital 12 times in the first month, then 15 in the second. By the third month, he stopped counting. At first, he told himself he was just checking on his investment, making sure the money was being used right. But that lie didn't last long. The truth was simpler. He wanted to be there, wanted to see them, both of them. Jordan's treatment was brutal. There were days he couldn't keep food down, days he was so tired he could barely open his eyes, days when the pain was so bad all he could do was cry while his mother held him. Alexander was there for some of those days, sat in the corner while Melissa stroked Jordan's head and sang to him, watched her be strong when her son needed her to be strong, watched her fall apart in the hallway after, when Jordan couldn't see. Those were the moments Alexander learned to just be present, to not try to fix everything, to just sit with her in silence while she cried. But there were good days too, days when Jordan felt strong enough to play chess. He beat Alexander 4 times out of 5. "You're not very good at this," Jordan said once, moving his knight. Alexander laughed. "No, I'm really not. That's okay. Mom says nobody's good at everything. What are you good at?" Alexander thought about it. "I used to think I was good at making money. And now? Now I'm learning to be good at other things." Jordan looked at him seriously. 6 years old, but somehow older. "Like what?" "Like showing up, like being there when someone needs you." Jordan smiled. "That's better than money." Out of the mouths of children. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Jordan's white blood cell counts were improving, slowly, but improving. The tumors were shrinking. Week by week, color came back to his cheeks. His appetite returned. He started asking when he could go back to school. Alexander brought things: books about dinosaurs, a tablet loaded with educational games, a stuffed triceratops that Jordan named Rex, even though it wasn't a T-Rex. "Doesn't matter," Jordan said. "Rex is a good name for any dinosaur." And somewhere in those 3 months, something shifted between Alexander and Melissa. It happened slowly, carefully, like 2 people learning a new language. She started calling him Alex instead of Mr. Walsh. He started asking about her day, her mother, how she was holding up. Small moments accumulated, their hands brushing when they both reached for Jordan's water cup, their eyes meeting over Jordan's sleeping form. Quiet conversations in the hallway during medication, changes. Other families started assuming Alexander was Jordan's father, Melissa's husband. Neither of them corrected it. One afternoon, rain drumming against the hospital window, Jordan fell asleep mid-sentence. The doctors said his numbers looked good, really good. Melissa walked Alexander to the elevator. She stopped, turned to him. "I need to tell you something." He waited. "Before all this, I was just surviving, working every hour, too tired to feel anything, too scared to hope for anything." Her voice was soft. "You didn't just save Jordan's life. You saved mine too." "Melissa." "No, let me finish." She looked at him with eyes that held something new, something vulnerable. "These past 3 months, you've shown up, not just with money, with your time, your presence. You've sat with us through the worst days. You've celebrated the good ones. You've become—" She paused, searched for the right word. "You've become family." Alexander felt his throat close up. "And I just need you to know," she continued, "that whatever happens, whether Jordan beats this or if he doesn't, you changed our lives. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us that people still care, that we're not alone." Alexander stepped closer, took her hand. "You saved me first. I was living in a tomb, going through the motions, dead inside, and then I found you in the rain, and—" He stopped, looked at their joined hands. "You woke me up. You and Jordan. You showed me what actually matters, that having everything means nothing if you're not sharing it with people who make you want to be better." She squeezed his hand, didn't let go. They stood there in that hospital hallway while people passed by, just holding hands, not saying anything, not needing to. Because some things don't need words. Some things you just feel. And what Alexander felt, standing there with Melissa, this woman who'd hidden behind trees, eating his leftovers, this mother who'd carried the world on her shoulders alone, was something he thought he'd never feel again. Purpose, connection, something worth waking up for, something worth living for. The elevator dinged, doors opened, but neither of them moved. Not yet. Because they both knew something had changed between them, something bigger than gratitude, something that felt like the beginning of a story neither of them had planned but both of them wanted. "What happens now?" Melissa asked quietly. Alexander looked at her, really looked at her, this strong, beautiful, courageous woman who'd taught him more about living than anyone ever had. "Now we keep going," he said, "together, if you'll let me." She smiled, a real smile, the first one he'd seen that reached her eyes. "I'd like that." And standing there in that hospital, with Jordan sleeping down the hall and hope finally starting to feel real, Alexander Walsh understood something he'd spent his whole life missing. That wealth isn't what you have. It's who you have. And for the first time in years, he was rich beyond measure. 6 months later, Jordan was in remission. The scans came back clear. His counts were normal. His hair was growing back dark, thick, with a cowlick that made Melissa laugh every time she tried to comb it. He was back in school, playing soccer on weekends, talking non-stop about wanting to be a paleontologist when he grew up. Maybe an astronaut too. He couldn't decide. He was 7 now, and he was alive. The doctors called it a miracle. Melissa called it answered prayer. Alexander just called it the best money he'd ever spent. But something else had happened in those 6 months, something neither of them had planned. Alexander had started the Jordan Foundation, a non-profit providing financial help to families facing pediatric cancer, grants for experimental treatments, money for medications, help with living expenses when parents couldn't work. And he'd asked Melissa to run it, not as a favor, as a job, a real one, with a salary that let her quit her other 2 jobs, with benefits, with a title that meant something. She'd said yes. Now she spent her days interviewing families, reviewing applications, deciding who got help, using her own story to guide others through theirs, hiring other mothers who'd survived the same nightmare. Women like her overlooked, undervalued, but capable of so much more. It was a Thursday evening, late. The foundation office in downtown Bridgeport was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. Melissa was at her desk, surrounded by grant applications, reading stories that broke her heart and put it back together at the same time. Alexander finished a call with donors and found her still working. "You should go home," he said. "Jordan's probably wondering where you are." She looked up, smiled. "Mom's cooking tonight. I have a few more minutes." He sat down beside her, looked at the application she was reading. A single father in Hartford, daughter with neuroblastoma. Same nightmare, different family. "We can help him," Alexander said immediately. "We can," Melissa agreed. That word, we, it still felt like the most beautiful word in the language. They'd been together officially for 2 months now. Though if Alexander was honest, it started long before that. Started in the rain. Started in that hospital room watching her hold Jordan's hand. Started the moment he realized that loving someone wasn't about grand gestures, it was about showing up, day after day, when things were hard. It wasn't fast, wasn't a fairy tale. They'd taken their time, careful, thoughtful, because both of them knew what was at stake. Jordan, the foundation, everything they were building. But it was real, more real than anything Alexander had ever felt. Melissa set down the application, looked at him. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What?" "That day you found me in the rain, when you asked me what I was doing there." "I remember." I was so ashamed, so broken. I thought my life was over, thought I'd lost everything that mattered. She took his hand. But that was the day everything changed. That was the day God put you in front of me, not to save me, to wake both of us up. Alexander looked at their joined hands, thought about that day, the rain, her tears, how small she'd looked under that tree, how far they'd both come since then. I was dying inside, he said quietly, living in that big empty house, going through the motions. I had everything, and I had nothing. And now? He looked at her, this woman who'd taught him what strength looked like, what love meant when it was tested, what it felt like to have a purpose beyond yourself. Now I know that real wealth isn't what you have in your bank account, it's who you have beside you. It's knowing your life matters to someone, that you're building something that lasts. Outside, rain started falling, soft Connecticut spring rain, gentle, cleansing. They both noticed at the same time, looked at each other, smiled. "Come on," Melissa said. They walked outside together, stood on the sidewalk, let the rain fall on them. "Remember?" she said softly. "How could I forget?" She leaned against him. His arm came around her shoulders naturally, like it belonged there. "I was hiding that day," she said, "eating your leftovers, crying because I thought that was all I deserved, thought I had to carry everything alone. And I was blind," Alexander said, "walking through my life, not seeing anything, not feeling anything." She turned to face him, rain on her face. But this time, no tears, just peace. "You taught me something," she said, "that accepting help isn't weakness, that letting someone in isn't failing, that love, real love, means letting someone carry the weight with you. And you taught me that having everything means nothing if you're living for yourself, that the richest life is the one you give away." They stood there in the rain, two people who'd found each other in a storm and built something beautiful from the wreckage. Jordan was at home with his grandmother, probably doing homework, probably talking about dinosaurs. Tomorrow morning, they'd approve grants for 6 more families. Next week, they'd testify at the state capitol about funding for pediatric cancer research. Next month, they'd open a second office. But tonight, right now, it was just this: rain falling, 2 hearts beating, 2 lives changed forever. "Thank you," Melissa whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me, when I was invisible to everyone else, for not walking away when it got hard, for loving my son like he's yours." Alexander's throat tightened. "He is mine. You both are, if you'll have me." She smiled, reached up, kissed him there in the rain. And it felt like healing, like redemption, like coming home. Because sometimes God doesn't give you what you want. He gives you what you need. Sometimes he brings you to your knees so you finally learn to see what was right in front of you all along. Sometimes he sends rain not to drown you, but to wash you clean, to strip away everything false until only what's real remains. And what's real is this, that we're not meant to carry our burdens alone, that wealth without purpose is just weight, that the people we overlook might be the ones sent to save us. That love, real, sacrificial, show up every day. Love is the only thing that lasts. Alexander Walsh had thought he knew what it meant to be successful, to have it all, to win. But standing in the rain with Melissa, water streaming down their faces, he finally understood. He'd spent 45 years building a fortune, and it took one woman eating leftovers in a storm to show him what being rich actually meant. Not what you hold in your hands, but who you hold in your heart. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Walsh was truly, completely, perfectly wealthy. What about you? Have you ever walked past someone in pain without stopping? Have you ever been the one hiding, carrying your burden alone, too afraid to ask for help? This story is for you. For everyone who's ever felt invisible, for everyone who's forgotten what really matters. Sometimes it takes a storm to wake us up. Sometimes it takes someone else's breaking point to show us our own. But here's the truth. You're not alone. Your struggle matters. Your story matters. And maybe, just maybe, the person you're meant to help, or the person meant to help you, is closer than you think. Sometimes all it takes is stopping long enough to ask, "What are you doing out here in the rain? So tell me, where are you watching from? and who in your life needs to know they're not invisible? Drop it in the comments, because this story doesn't end here. It continues with you.